Uh, Technically, it's more than one question. It's actually maybe three, but I want to start this way. Do you remember when you first got excited? Technically, it's more than one question. Do you remember when you first got excited about homeschooling? Like if you're looking into it, et cetera, that's great. But do you remember if you've done it for a while, the first time you really got excited about homeschooling? Well, then this happens. Another question. What makes you think you can teach your kids at home? Now, that may have come before, it may have come after. And the real question I want to ask is who was the best teacher you ever had and why? Who was that best teacher? Because all of these things are going to relate to what I want to share with you in these moments together. Jody and I were very excited too to homeschool. We were quite excited, but I will confess, though we felt the exact same emotion, she interpreted it different than I did. I interpreted it as excitement. She interpreted it as fear, right? So you can come a little closer to me. In doing that, we were looking forward to what would it be like to educate our own children, to have them around the house continually, to be able to share our values and watch their little minds bubble up and grow. And of course, some of the context we had was we weren't exactly confident of the home school, or excuse me, the schooling in our area. So all these things were excitement. But to me, it was fear to her because she know how to turn out, what we do, et cetera. How do you, I mean, we were in the early days before anybody could imagine this was even a possible thing. So I had a secret in my head. And the secret came because I, around the eighth grade, was switched from public to private school. So this was back in Alabama, there were civil rights conflicts. Dad was in the legislature. There were all kinds of things going on, and academics were having their problem. There were all kinds of issues at that time. And so I got to go to this private school, and you wear uniforms and ties, and academically, you have to be approved to get in there. And so I actually was incredibly excited about it. And then my first math test, I made a 50. And then I studied and I studied, and I was at C levels and everything or below. And in that process, where I was literally studying 7 hours a day as an eighth grader, and I wasn't even hardly passing compared to what I'd done in public school. And in that challenge and difficulty and exhaustion and stress of wanting to perform and keep up, et cetera, Mrs. Murray invited me and mom to sit down and talk about it. And so we're talking and discussing how exhausted I am, how poorly I'm doing, et cetera. And she asked this question. She said, well, what do you think you're trying to do? What's the goal here? And I said, learn everything everyone's teaching me. And then she didn't guffaw. She was much more frightened than that, but she smirked or something. And she said, yeah, that's not possible. You're going to exhaust yourself. You can't learn everything. The trick is to learn what's important. Well, that was magical because I woke up and I limited my time to about 2 hours of study a day. That generated focus. I also discovered that I had to do things in my own way, and I took ownership. So I started learning how I could remember things, how I could understand things. that if it was going to happen, I had to be the one to figure this stuff out. The teachers were throwing stuff at me, but because of the way I was interacting, I was just exhausting myself and trying to learn everything, not strategic things. And as I took ownership of that, my grades went up, my effectiveness went up. I went to college, I did pretty well. I got a master's degree where I graduated with honors and went on to get a doctorate with a 4.0. That stage, they don't care about grades if you're in there. They care about that one big paper you do. And it comes to this. Your learner is the teacher. The teacher's just a tool. I was the exact same person before and after. I mean, sorry, the teachers were the exact same before and after, but because I took ownership to become my own teacher, everything changed. Your learner is the teacher, and the teacher is a tool. And that means your student is that learner is the teacher, and you're there to be a tool. Just think about it. If they have a phone, if they don't, and they get one someday, but let's say they have a phone. Have you ever noticed how quickly they can figure out how to work that phone and then show you how to do it? Who's the teacher? Or what about a computer? Same game, figuring it out, or some game they may play on a computer, whatever. They figured out, become an expert compared to you. Who is their teacher? Just learning to talk. Did you really have classes and talking for your children? I mean, you may have showed them how to pronounce something or corrected the way they said it or taught them a new word, but did you have classes that had to teach a child how to talk? How this wild game of charades where we use symbols and words and facial expressions to communicate meaning so we can get fed and protected and enjoy life. Any subject they love, think about it. Any subject they love and they've studied and all, have you noticed how much more they know than you? Who was their teacher exactly? And then just for your life, think about something you really learned and you really mastered. Did you really have a teacher? I mean, you might have had a tool, but didn't you really teach yourself? Look, here's how it worked. Ms. Murray was my best teacher because she introduced me to myself, my teacher. And once I began to be the one that was in charge of instruction and learning, everything changed. So there are two declarations I want you to make. Two. One is you want to declare to your student that they're the teacher. Number two, you want to declare yourself their aid. And their aid means sometimes you help them look at a problem. Sometimes you create some discipline. Sometimes you help them keep up with information. Sometimes you just get them to the library and get the right tools and they're in front of them. But you're the teacher's aid. You're the chief learning officer, but you're the teacher's aid. They're the teacher. Make those declarations because I guess I'd say it this way. The well-taught are self-taught. And all learning, public, private, and all the rest, fundamentally is going to come down to that ability, that self-taughtness. The well-taught or the self-taught.
Good deal.
So, what are your thoughts?
I like it.
Anything
Certainly
else?
not the way we usually think. I mean, no.
Yeah. So what would you add to that, or what came across your mind as you hadn't heard me say any of that? I mean, we talked about stuff.
I
but,
knew about Miss
yeah.
Murray. Well, I just I think if you have a hesitation, you're like, no, I've got to teach him. I got to do an experiment. Give it a try. You'll be surprised. If you just stay in the background as their aid and, they'll come to you. Well, how would you do it? How do you think you could figure it out? Where do you think it might be in the book? Instead of just immediately helping them with the answer. And I think you're going to be amazed. And it's really so empowering. I mean, obviously it was empowering to Fred and to realize that, hey, I can do this, and I am going, I'm going to do it. It's empowering to the kids. And it should be very, once you see it working, very empowering to you too. Relax. It's going to be good. It's going to be fine. Your kid can do it. You can do it. But if you're, we've just known several parents that were so involved, not even homeschool parents. These were school kids, but they were so involved in their kids' learning. Fred and I would just go, how in the world is that kid ever going to leave home? How are they going to do college? Because their parents had done all their subjects with them, really. And you're just like, oh my goodness, that poor child. I mean, that's almost child abuse. Unless you really want them to live at home the rest of their lives and you do everything for them. I don't think many people want that. Even if they live at home, you're not doing everything for them, I hope, if they're adults.
Yeah, it goes with the saying one of my professors offered us from time to time, and it was that if you do something for someone they can do themselves, you turn them into a cripple. You literally are hindering them. You're crippling them, as it were. And so when you understand that, everything can start changing. So I'm saying hello in the chat. If you can tell me where you're from, we're in San Antonio. That'd be fun to know. And what we're looking for are questions about anything homeschooling or parenting. Yeah, it's all related. Relationships, parenting, management, organization, all those things are intimately related one with another. But your questions, it may be straight up about homeschooling, but I'm going to tell you that when we got focused on wanting to grow children to be their own teachers, when we had an orientation to cause them to learn, when we and thinking this through, figured out that we wanted to raise or grow up happy adults, then empowering them to be able to learn, set them on a course where they could retool, relearn anything they want. We have one son who's a writer and an artist. That's what he studied, but he's a senior executive programmer. And integrates it with design and how it looks, things look. But areas you wouldn't think go together necessarily, art and math. But because he could learn, I remember him distinctly running into a certain, it was the Wolfram software stuff and whatever company he was in back then. Nobody knew how to run it. And so, or make it work. And so he finally did what he knew to do. Just like when you paint, you start with something, add a little more, add a little more. So he started teaching himself and he learned the software, and he wound up having to teach everybody else because he knew he's the actual teacher. And the teachers and the manuals and videos, whatever else he had, those were just tools for the learning. So what kind of questions are on your mind, or comments or successes, really anything that's on your mind? Yep. We're open to. So Melissa throws out, hey, I have a question. Where can you find data that supports children that are homeschooled usually perform better academically than public school children? And I see people in London, which is awesome, and Christchurch in the UK. Nobody from Alabama yet. So, but so data that supports children that are homeschooled usually perform better academically than public school. So before I try to think about that with you, one thing on my mind is, why do we want this? And some of it is it boosts our confidence. It makes us a little happier. It helps the kids understand it, etc. But the truth is that when we do averaging of anything, it gets murky. So like people in any category, they start saying what the average of something is. And so average turns into this mean compilation of all the data points. And so you're trying to say on balance, they could be doing better. On balance, they can be doing worse. But basically, do homeschoolers perform better. And what you might want to do with that information is strictly up to you. But here's where I would go first. So I'll do it right now. I probably could show you my screen. I'll just go here. So I wonder if I can do that. Let's see. I know there's a way to pull this off. So let's share my screen. So it looks like I'm sharing. We'll pretend that's working. And we'll pretend that's working. And then you'll see the kids after their antler egg hunt where they went and found deer antlers. And so what I'll do is I'll just start, let's just say Chat GPT, and I'll say, what is the evidence that homeschoolers outperform other students in college? Let's just say it that way. And obviously didn't like outperform, so we'll fix that. And let's see what it says. So I go in here and it says the evidence regarding outperform homeschoolers college compared totally is somewhat mixed, but there are some studies and data points that suggest homeschoolers can perform well in college. Homeschool students typically score above average in standard tests. GPA in college, homeschoolers tend to have higher GPAs. Admission to elite colleges. There have been cases where homeschool students gain admission to great universities, indicating colleges recognize academic capabilities. Self-directed learning often involves more personalized and self-directed approach to education, foster skills, transition to college. Okay, so that's not bad. So that gives you some data. I'm now going to go to, oh, boo. Where is it in line? There's another research thing I just found. Tolerate with me. Is it here? AI. Yeah. Liner. Here we go. So in Liner, it's a research type thing that is, I'm not signed in on, obviously. Let's see if I can pull this off. I had it set up and obviously the browser I was using blew up. So we'll see how this does. Ask anything. No, I don't want Copilot. It's installed. I really didn't care to do that, but anyway, I'm trying to get there as fast as I can. And it may not work well. So Liner is a research program. So it's an AI program, but it's set up to do more of a like academic, and this would be a good category. So here we go. So I'm going to put the same question in, just see what it says. So inside what evidence homeschools out for other students in college, solving steps. So what it'll give you is the steps on how to approach this as a paper, getliner.com. So it'll tell you, demonstrate homeschoolers students generally perform well academically. Research suggests exhibit higher ACT scores, similar type things. So it's National Education Research Institute published a study in 2018 revealing 78% of peer-reviewed studies demonstrate statistically significant positive connection between home education and academic achievement. A similar study, Journal of School of Choice, indicated home-educated students score 23 to 42% higher on standardized tests. And it goes in GPAs and other stuff. So I think that's a fair answer to your question, I hope. And that gives you kind of a hint. You can Google it, you can research it. The easiest way to go is ask the nerdiest homeschool friend of yours that you can find, and they'll probably write you a paper. Wouldn't that be fun?
good question that we had not researched, but thank you for sharing and showing.
Well,
us
we
that.
have seen some of that data, but
I mean, we just don't have it.
well, and we also did not care about that data, basically. We basically, honestly, in our experience, we just were trying to do the best job we could with our kids, because no matter who you put through, what educational process you go through, it's still going to be a bell curve. Some are going to do worse, some are going to do better. You know, we have a thing in Texas where if you're in the upper 10% of your class in a public school, 8%, those eight, let's see, or is it 8%? 8%.
Somewhere between 8 and 10%, I think.
They're automatically accepted into state schools like the University of Texas or Texas A&M or somewhere like that. So with those kinds of, games in play, the problem is, the school in some outlying area in East Texas is not going to be the same kind of school as one of the wealthier areas in the Dallas-Fort Worth, metroplex. It's just not going to be. And so it's kind of an assumption or way of filtering to try to figure out how do you get the best kids in there.
Well, and it takes up, those are immediately spots that are taken away from everybody else. Well, I mean, whether you like that system or not, that group of kids, if they apply, they get in.
Yep.
And so
let's go on with some of these questions. Sure. So, children with different needs often do better as you do more that's tailored to them. I think that's right, though there's still a minimum amount they have to do. Like, I would still say you want your child to learn to read, even if they have struggles with it. Jody certainly had dyslexia. And so those struggles she had also played into her learning a skill and working at it. And you read every day. So they might have a weakness, but they need to get up to at least a certain level of competence with it as you work with them over time. That's just the nature of the game.
And I think she was responding also just to the at home, you can tailor things to your child better, your special need child, than a school will be able to.
Oh, one of the advantages. Yeah, I think there's no doubt about that. You also, it's not that only. It's even that you can also catch where your child is struggling. I didn't learn long division, so the next year in 6th grade, I had to go back and redo the game. And
I'm just looking at Melissa gives us more info.
Yeah,
I wanted to know.
I get a lot of negativity from colleagues at work, and I just want to show them some positive reasons. Oh, I got you. Well, there are a couple, some positive reasons, but part of the positive reasons, that you can tell somebody, honestly, is just ask them, what is the standard of comparison? Like really, how do you measure public school being a better solution for your child than homeschool? And invite them, they're the ones claiming that public school is better. That's something they would need to prove. Like, why in the world would you imagine that public school is better, given everything we know and what we're seeing? That's not a thing. In fact, honestly, when you think that way, that it's them that needs to prove it, it puts the conversation in the right place, not them defensive, but more objectivity about the whole thing. And so when you are actually engaged in that process of a conversation with people, just help them understand that this one simple point. We know that when children don't do well in school, that to help them, you have to buy a tutor. You have to purchase tutoring. You have to get a tutor to work with the kids. And if you don't get one, you do it. Because what we know is this student-teacher ratio is a big deal. And so imagining that a public school with a good teacher with a packed class could do a better job than a burden-interested parent that can spend one-on-one time with a kid would be better, is kind of against both common sense and research. I mean, I'd definitely start there. That's me. You got anything to add to that?
No, I just think back when we started doing it, there wasn't research to prove anything. And people were still thinking your kids were going to turn out weird and all this other stuff, the social stuff. But we just, even with our family members, we're just kind of told ourselves, look, the proof's going to be in the pudding, or, let's just wait and show them,
Well,
thing.
yeah, let's just be controversial for a second. I mean, I bet the number of furries in homeschools is probably close to Zippo. And I just saw an article this week where furries are kids who identify as animals. Is that right? Close enough. Are starting to bark a lot and bite in school. And, just the distraction level of public education, never mind what they're teaching and all the rest. And it's not really a lot of times about learning, but it's about social engineering and agendas. I mean, it's almost an environment you can't learn in. Fortunately, if you saw the first part of this live, you'll know that I was trying to pitch that kids are the best teachers. And so they teach themselves. So a lot of kids in public school, I would argue, learn despite or in spite of the actual education process. So
I remember one friend of ours whose kid was in college. I think we've even brought this up before. He couldn't understand his mathematics teacher. This is college level. He couldn't understand the person's accent.
Chemistry.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And so he just finally just took the book and taught himself and didn't even worry about trying to understand the professor's.
Yep. And then irritated the whole class because his grade was off the scale compared to everybody else's. So there's that. All right. Guthrie says, hi, Dr. Fred. My son is 16. Bless you. And David was conquering giants by 16. So capable of something. And has been doing Robinson curriculum since day one. The only writing course we did was yours. He now writes articles for an online company on 3D printing to make side cash.
Aw,
isn't that great?
Fantastic.
Yeah.
What a good deal for him. And thanks for the kudos from Fred.
Well, and the course was just a tool because your son taught himself.
Totally.
And you were a strategic tool by getting him to write every day.
Yes.
And giving him the feedback the way we approached it. So yeah, kudos for the writing course. If you don't have the writing course, even to supplement your stuff, I don't know what to do for you. So if you do annual standardized testing, Jim says you can see where they are in comparison to their age and peers. And that's fair in what it tests. And standardized testing is not off the radar anymore. For a while, they were cutting back from colleges to where we aren't doing standardized testing. We're letting people in other ways. And then they started learning, yeah, that didn't work. So now it's coming back because we are measuring something about their capability, but it's somewhat restricted to college. It's similar to IQ. IQ is good within a range, but it's kind of relative. And then it depends on your hard work and your study and what you've learned. Someone who with a sharp IQ has not read the book will not do as well on the book test as a person who actually read it.
And I know some states or places, I should state, y'all are all over the world, but some places require that your children take a standardized test every year. Ours did not require that.
I find using reading time to write the articles because of deadline. He says Robinson books are no longer fun and he wants to read research on his article more. What would you do? I'll tell you what I'd do. I would let him switch out research every second or third book. So if he'll go ahead and blaze through a couple of Robinson books, give him a set amount of pages or something where part of his reading is to research an article. And he just needs to show you what he read and what he did and all the rest because, hey, he's practicing reading and he's adding to his mind. So I think that's all good. But that's what we did with kids that had other interests. We just let them filter books in. What we found is they, after a while, didn't want to add books. They just want to get through the curriculum each day, and then they could do their fun reading in the afternoon. So if it's set up that way and works efficiently, usually somebody will figure that out. when I was working on my master's degree, the books I had to read 3,000 pages a semester, but on average. And so much of it was just rock solid boring that I would have to read 10 books on the side just so I could tolerate reading their 3,000 pages. It all worked out, but that's how I coped,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, there's nothing wrong in having him do, I like Fred's saying, some Robinson, some his own research that I mean, it's obviously he's not just sitting there reading comic books, obviously. So golly, that's
What are you
sounds
dissing
like
on
really
comic books
good.
for? That's a whole industry.
Or whatever.
Yeah. Uh,
But yeah, I'd totally include that in his education. I would,
yeah, just integrate it. He's
yeah.
reading. More power to
Um,
him. And ideally get him to come up with a plan about how many pages, what's he doing, etc. And you don't want to stay with it totally, but about a book length, you know, whatever that means. So there's some trade-off in there, for sure. But a lot of life is us figuring out how to find time to read the stuff we want to, when we're not at work. Another question. Couldn't agree more with our statement. With time waste of public schools, plus we're in California, so public would not be an option. So yeah, I'm not sure why public wouldn't be an option, except the guesses we all have about California. You know, I'm in Texas, so the California Public Relations Department is not running a good campaign in Texas. I'm sorry. But yeah, so it can be there's a huge amount of time wasted in school. It just has to be getting classes and back and distractions and relationships and then what you're wearing and which group you're in, whether you're a prepper or this, that I know a
even
preppy,
in
a
the best
preppy or a
schools,
prepper.
I mean,
Yeah.
even in good
Yeah.
schools, there's just, yeah.
Yeah, it's quite impressively inefficient. And it can't not be. You know, that's why they lock in the socialization that's so important. And yet you're getting socialized to just be a weirdo. Now, you know, honestly, your opportunity to get weird is much better in public school than home now. It's wild. And it's not like we don't know this. I'm not saying anything. You know, you can find a school that's an incredible exception and more power to you, but that's not what we're talking about. We're just talking on balance. What are we looking at here? So,
Yeah.
man, great questions. What else? What else is on your mind in this crazy world of education? Or if you got any practical tips, I will say this: that there is one advantage public school has, public context, for certain types of students, and that is somehow the dynamic of how competitiveness or competition or some, you know, racing the clock together, or there's something good in humans about that competition that brings out something great. I'm not talking about terrible and abusive and bully. I'm not talking about anything like that. But I'm saying that there's something that like stretches you. So when the 4 minute mile was broken, what he did was he would have top runners run alongside him at full speed, so he would race against them to get his speed up.
Oh, and they would trade out because they
Yeah,
couldn't do it.
yeah, and they'd trade
Okay.
out, and so that level of stretching competition, you know, most of us are kind of that way. That if you're going to be successful, you've got to practice something until it's automatic. So this is skill development. People that are really masters at things keep practicing after it's automatic because they want to improve it. Well, a lot of that is generated by the level of competition, like in the Olympics. We get records broken, things set because the standards are so high, you know, the record set, and then you want to get a little more. So there is a dynamic, and we have a little bit of it with 5 kids, but a dynamic in the public forums where that competitiveness helps you. What I'd say, the reason I bring all that up, or it can help some students. But what I guess I'm getting at is you can set that up if they can learn in a way what golfers have to learn. So golfers, yeah, they're sort of competing against each other, but they're actually competing against themselves. And so when your student starts catching on, can they stretch a little more? Can they do it a little faster? That can they make sense of that book quicker? Can they write more faster or do better with words? All those things, if they're competing with themselves as their own teacher, help a great deal. And sometimes the structures of what we're around help that game anyway. So I understand the value of that. That's just not the only factor that's in the story.
Yeah, that's a good point. And even maybe encouraging them to, by asking them questions or setting up a system of, because I could see thinking back that some of our kids could have used a little prodding with, well, how's that going for you? Would you like to get better at it? I bet you could read faster, or whatever it might be that you're saying. I think that would have been good to
Well,
even
and we did it some. We probably, some degree, when you measure it and they see where they are, that becomes like a timeline, a history. They can look back and see, wow, I have accomplished a lot. And then they look ahead to what they want to stretch towards. Of course, mostly they want to stretch with getting it done and getting out and on into life, or into what is in the afternoon. So some of our kids love to work hard so they could film and edit videos they made around the house, and others so they could work on playing musical instruments, or others would get through a school so they could go out and be social with their friends, or others so they could read, or others, it all varied and might be similar, but it's that it's that whole game. So Melissa asked, what are your top 5 best memories of homeschooling your children?
and
the 5
worst.
worst. Well, I don't know if we can get 5 each, but I'll trade out with you.
Fred will be better at this. Yeah. Well, and we would have different ones too, I think.
So what's one best memory?
I really enjoyed.
Oh, that was going to be mine. Oh, I'm sorry. Our kids always did that.
And this was especially when they were younger. I mean, there was a 9-year spread, so obviously some, but just back when we were doing reading and narration was just always a sweet time. Because we were all doing it all together, and we didn't continue that through the whole of homeschooling, but for many years we were doing that, and that's one of my best memories.
Yeah. Well, so
I mean, more like, not just a one-time thing. But.
Yeah, I mean, I look back on homeschooling. One of the things I really quite liked was how, when we settled the system down and they knew when to start and what was next, and we had it working, it was a very peaceful home, at least during school. They weren't, there were some, when the last 2 were together, they'd jabber with each other, they'd do stuff, boy stuff. But I just remember one of the things that was so nice is I might be working in my office and they don't need my help, don't need Jody's help. They're getting things done. The house is quiet. People are learning. So that was quite fun. The other stuff I really liked were when I got to interrupt their lives and teach them something I was learning. They didn't exactly like it, but they responded well. And I would always trade off. I'd say, so I can teach you for about a half an hour. And of course, I'm time blind, so it might go longer. But I'll teach you for a half an hour, and you can get an hour off reading. So they were all happy about that. And then I could teach something. So I remember a couple of things too that I did. I've mentioned before, getting the boys. One of the boys one time said, I'm not coordinated. And so I came up with this idea that if they would, I gave them juggling balls, juggling book instruction. And if you learn to juggle, if you juggle in front of me for 15 seconds, you'll get, what I do, something big like a day off school.
Yeah, they got
day off school.
Pretty big. Yeah.
So one got onto it fast, one a little faster. The uncoordinated one took a while, but then did it. And then I asked them, I said, so why did we do that? And they said, well, I don't know. Your dad, you just make us do stuff. And it's like, no, because given that you're uncoordinated, how can you juggle? So that's called a discrepancy question. And it mildly broke his brain. He's still doesn't do sports or much of that kind of stuff, but he does plenty. So, I mean, he's not uncoordinated. He's not falling all the time. The other thing was to get them all to play chess. So for a little while, we cut out 1 hour of the 2 hours of reading, and they could play chess. And if you won, you could keep actually
Taking off more school, playing the
take
other,
more school, not
yeah.
do less reading. If you kept playing, if you kept winning.
if you were the winner, yeah.
So we did that for a couple of weeks or something
Yeah.
like that. And so everybody learned a little bit about chess. But what I was going for, and I think they caught on to, I know they caught on to, is that with chess, you need to probably think a few moves ahead. I mean, the masters probably have it all memorized and know instantly what to do, and don't worry about them. The rest of us are looking like, how does that threaten us? And if I move here, move there. And if your kids can learn to think a few moves ahead, they're going to be ahead of everybody. Because people aren't used to doing that, they're just so obsessed with the moment. So some of those learning things were great.
Mm-hmm.
What about
some bad ones?
Yeah.
Memories.
what was the question exactly?
5 best and 5 worst memories of homeschooling.
5 worst memories. Gotcha.
Oh man. Probably just not even having to do with home. I mean, I guess it did. Just their, if they got into bickering or just weren't probably like just weren't taking too much advantage of breaks. But those aren't bad. I mean, those are just things that we dealt with. So I don't know about a.
Yeah, I didn't like my worst memories are probably around, and they're not bad, but I didn't like how there's more than one. There were probably about 3 different times I remember where the kids didn't like homeschooling, wanted to be in public school. This isn't good, kind of whining, griping or something. And we worked through it. When we had to let go visit school with a friend one day, and I think by the time he did the math, and then I showed him, uh, okay, you're on a bus this time, you do this, you get back at this late point in the day. You have this interactions. There's those fun things because he's social stuff. But what'd you learn? What are they working on? What are they going through? By the time he does the math and realize how little time he was spending on school, compared to kids between the daily block of time they were obligated to, and then you add to that any homework, special projects, other stuff. Homeschool is way less time to, I think, in our context, we could demonstrate to learn way more. But I wanted them to catch on faster, but I'm like that, so.
And I would say, I mean, as a benefit, as adults, our kids they don't necessarily live close to each other. Well, 2 of them do. They're pretty close. They enjoy each other. They get on the phone with each other. When we are all together, it's an enjoyable time. So I think that has to do with us being home with them and homeschooling.
And they secretly have complaints about each other, ways that improve each other.
Well, yeah,
but
yes.
But that's human. But they also don't do much with it. They just understand, accept each other, and get that, man, each of you have some real talents, and each of you, I have talents. They would think to themselves, and we're all working out our own stories, our own games, and so it's not. I don't feel and don't see that much competition between them after my little talking competition. I do think there's some, they're enjoying pulling stuff off together, like we're having kids, we're learning stuff, we're growing, we're seeing things happen, we're doing life. But it doesn't strike me as a competition.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Any other bad memories or good with schooling?
Because I think that, schooling.
I can tell you one favorite memory I had is our 2 oldest kids cut a deal with the private school I was helped start and was teaching at. So after we got them going to homeschool, wound up getting on a board and starting a private school. And then I wound up teaching there for a while in fine arts and creativity and stuff. So they were missing on their friends. The other friends from youth group went to that school, and so they asked the dean of students because they could go there for free because I was teaching. But they asked if they could just come out and hang out on Wednesdays or one day. I don't remember.
It was a college model, so there were a lot of breaks for the kids that they had.
University model. Yep.
Mhm.
So they had time to hang out and all. And both of them, after a while, said two things. They said, you know, we like doing it, but I don't want to go to school there because they're going so much slower than we're going. And we were going at their pace, you know, whatever their challenge was. We weren't pushing them, the child, just as they keep going. And then two, they realized most of the time when we go up there, we're spent having to kind of help our friends understand their schoolwork. So they're wound up tutoring the whole time, which is not what they went up there to do. But it's kind of cool to see kids that are, quote, learning at home, tutoring their friends and finding the pace of that private school to be slower than what they would enjoy. So that was fun.
Yeah.
That's probably ego. I don't know. That was fun to see. It's fun to see the system works. I wasn't teaching them. How can I take credit? You know, I just set up a game plan and believed in their hardwiring to learn, like we've been talking about. All right. So any last questions here? Let's see. Thanks for sharing. It's lovely here. Well, Melissa, honestly, it was a great question.
It was a good question.
Yeah. So, all right. That's a lot to think about. Now, do pass this along, especially I might cut that first thing out, but really take to heart what I was sharing with you about empowering your child to become the teacher. That's going to be a long-term real answer for their life. And you can get out of that role. You can be a teacher's aide and help them along. If you missed the first part of this video, it'll be available. Anyway, it's a joy. Y'all are awesome. Keep it up. Pass this stuff along, and we'll see you next week.
Have a great